Hey, welcome to the series of everything you need to know about Python in simplest possible way. In our previous videos, while discussing list, we have seen so many important concepts and also we have seen some of the important methods in order to deal with list, right? So in this video, we will be solving some of the problem by using some of the methods that we have already seen. So let's go ahead and solve the first problem that we have, which is removing duplicates in a list. So we will be having a list, and in that list we might have some duplicates. So what we need to do is that we need to remove the duplicate elements. So let us go ahead and solve this particular problem. So to take an example, I will be taking a list 1, and inside of this particular list 1 I will be consider some elements which may contain duplicates as well. So for that I'm taking 1 2 3 2 4 3 1 2, like this I am taking these elements. So you can observe we are having some duplicate elements, right? So 1 is repeating here and here, 2 is having 3 times, 1 2 3 times, like that we are having the duplicates. So let us go ahead and solve this particular problem. So in order to remove that, what we need to do, we need to iterate through this particular loop and find the elements which are repeating, right? So for that reason, how we are going to solve is that I will take first an empty list. So by using that empty list, we can able to solve effectively. So for that reason, I will be taking a name which is unique list here. So in this particular unique list, I am taking an empty list. Now I will take a for loop in order to iterate through this particular list 1. So for that reason I am taking a for loop. So I will use this particular element to iterate through this particular list 1 here. So after that, what I will be doing is that I will be checking a condition, and the condition is if this particular element not in this particular, not here, we need to check a not in condition that is in this particular unique list. So why we are doing this is because first we will be checking if this particular element is not in this particular list. If that is not in, what we will be doing, we will be appending that particular element. So what we are doing, we are adding the element to this particular unique list. So else if we don't have this, we are going to do nothing. So the only thing we need to do is that if the element is not in this particular unique list, we are going to add that element. So if that is already present, we are not going to do anything. So we will be getting a unique list of values that we will be having in this particular list. So I hope you can able to understand. So at the end of this particular loop, I will just print this particular unique list here. So now if I execute this, you can able to see we are only getting the unique values in this particular list. So I hope you can able to understand this particular logic. So we are having a for loop to iterate through this particular list 1. So after that, we are checking a condition. If the element that we are iterating is not in this particular unique list, then we are going to appending the element to the unique list. So if it is already present or anything else, we're not going to do anything at all. So the only concern that we are having is that we are checking an element present inside of this particular unique list or not. So if it is not present, we are going to add that. So by that way, we can able to get a list with unique values. So I hope you can able to understand that. So let us go ahead and see one more problem that we have, which is interchange first and last elements in a list. So in a list, we will be having some elements, right? So what we are doing here is that we will be interchanging the first element and last element that we have inside of a list. So let us go ahead and solve this particular problem. So for that, what I will be doing is that I will take a list 2, and inside of this particular list 2, I will be considering some elements. So I'm taking 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. So this is just a simple example to understand clearly. I am taking 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. So what I will be doing is that we know how to access the element which is in the first position and how to access the elements which is in the last position. So to access this particular first position element, what we need to do, we need to mention the particular list and we need to mention the index, which is nothing but 0, right? So in order to access this particular last element, we will be using the negative indexing, right? So I am taking list 2 and I am mentioning -1, which resulted this particular last value here. So what we generally do when we have this kind of statement is that we generally tend to interchange these values, right? So I will be first explaining the wrong method that we generally do. After that, I will explain the right method. So what we are doing is that we are taking this particular element and we are replacing that element with this particular element, which is nothing but the last element. We are taking first element, and in place of first element, we are placing the last element. So after that, what you may do is that you may take this particular last element and you may place replace the last element with first element. So after that, if I print this particular list 2, so this is the wrong method. So if I execute this, we can able to see the 50 is getting repeated and the beginning and at the end. How and why it is happening is that you are firstly taking this particular last element, which is 50, and adding that element to first index, which is nothing but the 0th index. After that, you are taking the first element which is replaced previously, right, which is nothing but 50 is replaced here inside of this particular 10. So you are again taking that 50 and you are placing that 50 in the last index. So because of that reason, we are getting this kind of a result. 50 is present at the beginning and at the end. So now I will be explaining the right method to do this particular problem. So first one, what we need to take is that we need to have a temporary variable to store either this particular 10 or this particular 50. So for that reason, what I will be taking is that I will take a temporary variable. I am taking this particular temp, and inside of this temp variable, what I will be storing is that I can store either this value or this value. So for the time being, I will be storing this particular 10 here, which is nothing but index 0, right? So I'm taking list 2 index 0. So after that, what I will be doing is that I will replace this particular index 0 value with this particular last index value. So for that, I am taking this particular list 2 index 0 and I will be replacing this index value with the list 2 index of -1, nothing but the last element that we have. So after completion of this, so now we can see, so if I print this here, so you can able to see we are still getting 50 and 50. So now what I have done here is that I have replaced this particular first 0th index element with 50. So now what we need to do is that we need to change this particular 50 with this particular 10 element. That is, we are storing in this particular temporary variable. So that is what I will be doing now. List 2 index of -1, and I will be assigning the value which is nothing but temp here. So now if I execute this, you can able to see the result. We are getting 10 at the end and 50 at the beginning. So we have interchanged the value. So the best and right approach is that we need to take a temporary variable in order to store any one of the element. So in this case, we are storing the first element that we have, which is nothing but 10 in this particular temporary variable. And after that, we are taking this particular index 0 value and replacing that value with the last element, which is nothing but the -1 index element. So after one that is completed, we are again in taking this particular last element and replacing that with the first element. By doing so, we can able to get the reversed or interchanged list that we have. So you can see the result here. So I hope you can able to understand this particular problem. So let us go ahead and see one more problem that we have, which is nothing but squaring each element in a list. So what it means is that we will be having this kind of elements, right, inside of a list. So we need to square those elements. So let us go ahead and see how we can do that. So for that, I will be taking the same example here, which is nothing but 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I will just replace this list 2 with the list 3 in order to differentiate the examples. So now what we will be doing is that we need to iterate through this particular list and do the modification. So for that reason, we can follow the general approach like this, or we can do list comprehension, right? So list comprehension we have discussed previously, which is used to do the process in a list itself. So for that reason, I will be taking the list comprehension here so that you can able to solve the problem using list comprehension also. So for that, what I will be doing is that I will take a element square list here. So after that, I will take a list, and inside of this list itself, we will be performing all the actions that are necessary to square each element inside of a list. So for that, I will be taking this particular for loop in order to iterate through these particular elements. So for element in list 3, so we will be getting the elements and each element in this particular list 3. So after that, what we will be doing is that at the beginning of this particular loop, after once we entered into this list, we need to modify a little bit. So which is nothing but the element is multiplying with doing this particular operation, which is nothing but square operation, right? So that is what I am doing here. And after that, this is it. So now we have done it, right? So we are taking this particular for loop in order to iterate through this particular list, and we are getting the elements through this particular element variable, and we are taking that element and we are squaring it, right? So now we will be getting this particular list of squared elements in this particular square list. So now what I will be doing is that I will just print this particular square list here. Square list here, and if I execute this, we can able to see the result. This particular element, each element inside of a list got squared, right? So we have got 100 because we have 10, right? 10 square is 100, 20 square is 400, 30 square is 900, 40 square is 1600, and 50 square is 2500. So like that, we are getting the all the values which are squared. So not only squaring, you can do any operation that you wanted. Let's say you wanted to add the value which is 2 for each element, you can do that. So I am adding this particular 2 to each element. Now if I execute this, you can able to see all the elements got added with 2, right? So 10 became 12, 20 became 22, 30 became 32, 40 became 42, 50 became 52. Like that, you can perform any operation for that matter. So I will do subtraction here, and if I execute this, you can see the result, the reduced value of 2 in each element. Like this, we can perform any operation on each element inside of a list by using this particular for loop and doing any operation that we wanted. So we can do that using list comprehension, which will be suggested and which makes the process simpler. And if you wanted to use the regular procedure like this using a for loop, you can do that as well. So I hope you can able to understand how we can square each element inside of a list, right? So let us go ahead and solve one more problem, which is nothing but element wise sum of two lists. So what we are doing is that we will be having two lists, and in that two list we will be having elements, right? So what we are doing is that we will be adding those two elements based on the element wise by element wise. So let us go ahead and see the example and understand the problem and solve the problem. So I will be taking a list 1 here, and inside of this particular list 1, I will take 10, and I will take 20, and I will take 30, and I will take 40. So we are having four elements, right? 10, 20, 30, 40. So I will take another list, and the another list also might have same elements or different elements. To make the process simpler, I will be taking the same elements here. So now what we need to do is that the problem statement is that we need to add these elements element by element. So we need to add this particular 10 with this particular 10, which resulted 20, and 20 plus 20 which need to get a 40, 30 plus 30 which needs to get 60. So like that, we need to add these elements element by element in this particular two lists. So let's go ahead and solve that particular problem. So we know that we have a specific method which is zip, right? So by using this zip only, we will be solving this particular problem. So for that reason, I am taking a for loop for element 1. So this element 1 will fetch the elements from this particular list 1. So I will take one more variable which is nothing but element 2. So this particular element 2 is responsible to fetch the elements from this particular list 2. So I will be using this particular zip here. So by using this zip, we can able to get the elements from both list 1 and as well as list 2. So here I will be mentioning the elements list 1 comma list 2. So after that, what I will be doing is that I will be printing the result by adding both of these elements, which is nothing but element 1 and element 2 here. Element 1 plus element 2 here. So now if I execute this, you can able to see the result. We are getting 20, 40, 60 and 80, which is nothing but the summation of this particular 10 and 10, 10 and 20 and 20, 30 and 30. So like that we can able to get this particular result. So if you wanted to add this particular elements to some list, you can do that as well. So for that reason I am taking a sum list here, and inside of this particular list I am not having anything, I am taking an empty list. So here after in this particular for loop I will be adding these elements, some list dot append. So I will be adding the resulted of this particular element 1 and element 2, and after that, after completion of this particular for loop, if I print some list here and if I execute this, you can able to see a list having the result of this particular element 1 and element 2. So I hope you can able to understand. So let's say we have in this particular example, I have very safely taken the each element of same length, right? So this list having the elements which are 4, and this list is also having the elements are 4. So let's say if I have one more element, let's say 50. So in such case, what's happening is that still we are getting only 4 elements here. So in such case, you can able to add this particular element only whatever the values that you are having. Let's say you wanted to get this particular last element also, you want this particular element also. So in such case we will be not using this particular zip, we need to use one more method which will be importing from the library. So the library which will be importing from iter tools import zip longest here. So by using this zip longest, we can able to get the longest iterable that we have. So previously we will be getting the shortest iterable, which is nothing but how many less elements we are having, that particular iterable only it will be taking using this particular zip. So if we use this particular zip longest, it will take the iterable which is having the most elements. So I will be taking this particular zip longest and I will be replacing that with this. So now if I execute this, you will get some error. So the error is int is not, so we cannot perform this particular addition operation with int and none type. So here we are having 4 elements only, and in this particular list one we are having 5 elements, right? So for that reason it was replacing this particular fifth element with none. So we cannot perform none and an integer operation addition, right? For that reason only it was giving this particular result. So for that, what we need to do, we need to pass one more parameter here, which is nothing but fill value. So I will be filling this particular value with 0. So now if I execute this, you can able to see we are getting the last element, which is nothing but this particular 50 also. Like that we can able to solve this particular problem when we have equal length or when we have unequal length, which means one list having more elements and another list having less elements. So I hope you can able to understand that. So the only important concept that we will be having, which is nothing but this particular zip. This particular zip only is used to fetch the elements from the both list, right? So I hope you can able to understand that. So let us go ahead and solve one more problem that we have, which is nothing but element wise concatenation of two lists. So previously we have seen element wise sum, which is nothing but sum operation between these particular elements, which is nothing but 10, 20, which is nothing but integer values, right? So here we are considering the concatenation, which is nothing but the addition operation between two strings. So let us go ahead and do that. So for that reason, I am taking a list 1. So inside of this particular list 1, I will be having, let's say like here. So I will be having subscribe here. So like and subscribe. So after that in list 2, I might have the elements, let's say comment, and I will be having share here. So these are the elements that we will be having inside of this particular list. So we will be following the similar procedure. You can say the same procedure that what we have followed previously in order to get this particular result. So I will be taking an empty list to add the elements to the list. So some concat list here. So to this concat list, we will be adding the elements. So for element 1, comma, element 2, and in zip. So we need to get the elements from this particular both list 1 and list 2, right? So zip list 1 and list 2. After this, inside of this particular loop, we need to do the same process that what we have done, which is nothing but the concatenation operation here. So for that reason, I am taking this particular concat list here. So I will be appending the elements which are nothing but summation of element 1 and element 2 here. So now at the end, if I print the result of concat list, and if I execute this, you can able to see we are getting like comment as a single string, subscribe share as a single string. If I put a space here, and if I execute this, you can see more clearly we are getting like and like from this list and comment from this list, and we are getting the concatenation result of like and comment. So subscribe in this list and share in this list. As a result, we are getting subscribe share as a result here. So I hope you can able to understand the same process that what we have previously by replacing this particular integer values with the list. So we can do the same process. Let's say if I have one more element here, let's say I have something like again. So if I execute this, we are not getting this particular like, right? The reason is because the same reason that what we have discussed previously. So this zip only consider the shortest iterable, which is nothing but this iterable. When we have more elements here, it will be ignored. So in order to consider this particular element, we need to use this particular zip longest here. I'm just taking this from here and I will replace here. So now I will be replacing this particular zip with zip longest. So after that, if I execute this, still we get error, and I need to replace this particular none type with something like, let's say, an empty string here. And if I execute this, you can see the result. We are getting this particular like also at the end. So I hope you can able to understand how we can add the elements element by element in this when we have more list like this. So not only two list, if we have more list, let's say I will consider list 3 here, and inside of this particular list 3, I will consider subscribe here. So I will be mentioning this particular list 3 here, which is nothing but list 3, right? So list 3, and if I execute this, and too many values to unpack, so we are getting too many values to unpack. The reason we need to mention one more element here. So for that reason I am mentioning element. So here also I need to mention this particular element 3. So now if I execute this, so element 3 here, and if I execute this, you can see the result. We are getting this particular subscribe at this particular like comment. The reason is because using this zip function, we can consider how many iterables that we want, and we can iterate through those particular iterable. We will be getting the result element by element. So I hope you can able to understand, and I hope you can able to effectively use this zip and zip longest whenever you wanted to iterate through multiple iterables. So I hope you can able to understand that, and I hope you have understood all the problem that we have discussed, which is removing duplicates in a list, interchanging the elements of first and last values, and squaring each elements in a list, element wise summation, element wise concatenation. So if you found this video interesting, hit the like button. In the next video, we will be seeing some more problems that we can solve using this particular list methods. So thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.